Hi friends, I'm Nimisha and I'm a surgeon, a mindfulness teacher, a mother, an artist and a writer. And today I am so very glad to be with you and to walk you through this absolutely lovely mixed media project that we will create together. And I want to tell you a little bit about the inspiration of this. Mixed media is one of my great loves. And it's also very relaxing for me to create art which is not necessarily outcome focused, but which is more about the process. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about practices that help me ground. And by ground, I mean practices that help me to really come back into my body and to become aware of my relationship and the relationship of my body with the space I'm in and with our earth. So that is what grounding means to me. And it's important because we can get very heady. We can get very caught up in our thoughts. We can overthink things a lot. We tend to get anxious nowadays. There's a lot in the world that makes anxiety feel justified. And yet we do need to center and ground ourselves if we are to take action in a way that is compatible with our values, in a way that allows us to live out our purpose, that allows us to carry out our activism, that allows us to pursue our passions. Because it is only all of those things, our passion, our purpose, our activism, and our values, which is going to allow us to shape this world into a better world, into the kind of world where I told you I'm a mother. I want my children, my child to grow up into. I say my children, when I have only one child, I mean all children are our children. I take the future very seriously, and for that, I need to be firmly planted in the presence because the present is where I can make a difference. And so, very much inspired by when my child was small, she had a lot of these sensory books, and there was a different texture on each page. It was basically to allow them to have that tactile experience. You know, the clouds are fluffy and the grass is rough. And that is something that's helpful for us as adults to come into the present moment. In fact, you may have heard of the practice 5-4-3-2-1, which is great for anxiety, panic attacks, intrusive thoughts, spirals of overthinking, to bring you back into the present. And it is basically you look around and 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, or you can switch them around, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And so I always find that, when you're in the middle of a panic attack or you are suffering from intrusive thoughts, it's not always easy to go and find something to taste or smell. Touch is something that's always available to us, no matter where we are. And our body itself offers a lot of different textures, right? Like your hair and your cheeks and like your chin, a bony part of your body, a soft part of your body, any surfaces that you may be on, the soft couch, the hard table. And so I wanted to make a texture board for adults, but I also wanted to connect it and link it to nature. And so this is a very simple project. Anyone can do it. You don't have to be arty, you don't have to be crafty, you don't have to be creative, although I beg to differ. I think that all human beings are creative by nature of being human. But often we have conditioning and we have inner critical voices that don't tell us that we're creative. But this is a project I promise anyone can do. It may look fancy, but this is literally cardboard from the wrapping. This is a coffee filter. Okay, these are tissues. So we're going to make this, and each of these textures, I think you'll be able to see on the screen as well. Each of these textures, you can probably hear this as well, is different to touch. They are different to look at, and there's also a bit of slow stitching over here. It's a very simple project. It took me an hour to film, so fair warning, it's probably going to take you about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do it. But hey, what's the rush? Spread it out over a couple of days. In case you don't have any of the materials I use here, I walk you through many different alternatives. But this anyone can do. And of course, you can choose different colors than I did. I chose these colors because they are the colors that I find grounding. So I'm going to include a little PDF document which has a list of supplies, including alternatives that you can use, and also a little bit of a step-by-step so that you can you don't necessarily have to watch the video over and over in order to remember what's to be done next. Each of these has a different texture. So you know how they say wearable art when they make clothes or they make those lovely earrings with resin and pressed flowers and stuff? This is touchable art. This is grounding art. Not only is the process of making it extremely relaxing, and I do say this with a caveat, some people find, art frustrating. Some people find art that doesn't go according to the instructions or according to their expectations frustrating. And so I must acknowledge that. I don't think that art or craft or anything is always relaxing. But I did try to simplify this project as much as possible to make the experience itself grounding in the sense that it's very tactile, it's very slow, it involves a lot of intuitive placement, and it also involves like action taking to see if what you are planning to do actually fits into the project or not, So it is quite forgiving in that sense. But then eventually when you keep it, I hope that if you need to ground, you will touch this grainy texture, you will touch this rough jute, you will feel the ridges on this packing paper. You will feel that this is smooth. You will feel these ridges or the seeds, and this itself will give you 4 or 5 different textures to feel. So let's do this project step by step, and I would absolutely love to see your creations if you're up to sharing them. And you can always tag me on Instagram at Magic with Nimisha is my handle, or on YouTube under the video. Let me know what you think about the process, and if you do it, what your experience is like. So our substrate for this project is going to be this A4 size paper, and it is a 300 GSM watercolor paper. We can also use mixed media paper or even heavy cardstock if that's all you've got. And I'm going to start by taping this down. I like to double tape my papers. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So that gives me really clean edges, because this isn't the highest quality artist tape that I can use. It's called masking tape, and it's supposed to be pretty high quality, but since I shop online, I'm not always sure of the quality. And so what happens is sometimes when I lift off the tape, it rips off the border, and I don't quite like that. So one thing that I like to do is double taping. And what double taping means is that I'll put this one layer to hold it steady on my board. You can use any board. This is just cardboard which came from some packaging. Whoops! I spilled water. It's alright. Not much damage done. So I'm just going to go ahead, and you can ignore the water stain. And so this is, the first layer was anyhow, and the other one is like from the edge of the paper. So I get a really clean, crisp and even width of background. And see, I'm placing it at the edge. So this outer edge and the edge of the paper matches, which I can see because the tape is transparent. So that gives even borders. And so we're ready to start. For the first layer, all we're going to do is put a very thin wash of watercolor paint, and I already have most of it squeezed out. I like this brown, this green, yellow and red. Those are the colors I've chosen for this project. And all I'm going to do is activate the paint, and what I'm going to do is put a few drops of water in each of the paint sections, and I just want a very, very soft kind of dreamy effect. So I'm mixing it up, starting with the yellow. And all I'm going to do is very, very gently. Watercolor dries much paler than it appears when wet. So you can be fairly strong without worrying too much about how it's going to look in the end. And because it's still wet, you can move it around. So I'm just making these really organic shapes, however the brush wants to go, however much pigment there is. Not really thinking too much or analyzing too much. You can always take some of this and put it in another spot. But I don't want the edges to dry up, because if the edges dry up, I'll get really hard lines, and I don't want these lines to be hard at all. So maybe I'll take a little brown and maybe some more yellow in between. And I've worked with these colors before, so I know that they go fairly well. And all I want is a really pale background. That's all I want. The yellow is a little too pale compared to the rest. And when it's really pale, sometimes you can miss out the edges. So I do want to be mindful of that. I just want it to be soft and flowy, and the effect that I'm trying to go for is like if you were taking a photograph in a garden and then the background is out of focus without overpowering the main project, which is the little branch with 7 petals of different textures, and how we are going to achieve those textures. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and I'm going to clear this up and come back. Now I did give a list of supplies that we can use for this project, but I just want to show you what I've done. Since the color theme is creamy yellow, green, red and brown, I have gone around the house picking up things from my art stash as well as from the house itself, which is textured like this. Okay? This is just packaging box. And so I love this texture, this corrugated texture. Right, so I could either use this, which is also got texture, or I could use this for one of the leaves if I wanted to do brown. So brown, there's obviously a lot of possibility. This is an old pattern book, which I'd actually collaged on, but I don't really care for this collage, so I would use this side. This is literally a grocery bag, brown paper bag. This is a piece of burlap which I have in one of my mixed media books, and it's really nice because you can fray the threads. But also, this is fabric on paper, and so there are certain things which we have to keep in mind when we use that. This is from an envelope. This is an old coffee filter. I don't have a coffee press at home, so this is a filter which I got from my favorite store. This was a piece of craft paper from a book, and I had done some collaging on it, so I could use this. This was a collage paper that I bought in pack. This was collage that I created from similar colors. And this is nice because it actually has the brown, the lighter brown which looks yellow, the darker black, and the green. So this is on simple copy paper or printer paper. And this is on thicker watercolor paper, so I could consider that for texture. In the cream and white, I have this embossed paper. Okay, I have this kind of khadi fabric. This is really useful. I bet we all have it at home in the kitchen. So butter paper, tissues, I'm sure we all have. Line paper. This is a coffee filter that wasn't that stained, so it almost looks whitish. This is just normal cardstock paper. For yellow, I have this old like envelope which I could use, which has got bubble wrap at the back of it. So I could use it with that. I could use one of these sections, but I'm not actually sure that I want to. So I'm just going to set that aside for now. I have this lovely felt, and this is actual wool felt, which I got as part of a doll making kit, and then I never ended up making the dolls. So this is thread because yes, we are going to do a bit of sewing on paper. This is very cheap craft felt fabric, and this is again a collage paper jelly print that I was doing, and I love the green and gold colors. I just love gold in general. This is what we can use for this project. I'm still waiting for that watercolor page to dry, and I don't want to waste any time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a template of a leaf. And it doesn't have to be accurate or in any way perfect. We're basically going to do this pattern. Maybe I should show you that now. We're going to do this pattern. So there's one leaf here at the end, and then there is okay, and each of these will have a different texture. So I got the idea from the sensory books that I used to get for my child. Oh, I have two more textures which I didn't introduce you to. And I probably should. But one second. I completely forgot about introducing those textures. So this is my not so perfect leaf. And of course, as I do each leaf, it's going to change. It's this rough twine and cotton balls. Okay, because you can glue them, right? So I'm going to come back with the texture that I forgot. Then we will use the sleeve template to decide which of the materials we're going to use and start cutting them out. I'm back with this chalk paint. I wanted to keep the supplies, things that we could use, which we find at home. But I also wanted to show you what other possibilities are there. And so chalk paint or poster paint or acrylic paint is really good to apply thick, and then you can scratch into it. So that's one way of getting texture. And another thing which I found is I had the sand. It's colored sand, but you may have sand because you live near a beach, or you may have children and they have those little kits with sand art and all. So if you have sand, that can make really lovely texture. So now we're going to use this template of a leaf, and it'll get my leaves into an even size. I'm going to use it to cut different things. I really like the way this felt feels. I still have to decide exactly what I want to use. I am definitely going to be using tissue because I want to show you how to layer tissue to get this really gorgeous texture effect. I love coffee paper, so that's probably another one. Let's do one thing. Let's cut into all our leaves and decide as we go. Okay, so choose your textures and it doesn't matter if your leaves are not perfectly the same. The whole point of nature is that it is very, very, I was going to say imperfect, but I think that nature's imperfection is actually perfect. So that's a weird conundrum. So I'm going to say instead that nature's variety is the thing that's beautiful about it. So you can use this kind of brown paper bag, but I have a feeling that I have altogether too many brown things. I like this section, and I honestly love gold. Let's see. I never worry about cutting through bits like this because I have have a small box in which I store all my bits and bobs, and I will use them later. So they will get used. It also depends on how fast or slow you want to do this project. It depends a lot on how many colors you want, what is the material you have available. Don't let fancy things stop you from doing what needs to be done. I really think we need to have some red, and I was going to use this felt sheet of paper, but these things don't stick very well. And so I think I'm just instead going to use my chalk paint and scratch into it. So that gives me two leaves. I am going to use, I think this, I don't know if I will use it. I can always do watercolor on one of the leaves, and that gives a very nice soft contrast. You may notice that I'm struggling the slightest bit with my scissor, and that's because I don't keep separate scissors for paper and cloth craft, and that's a big no-no. As anyone who works with fabric knows, you should use different ones for cloth because cloth really blunts the scissors. So the thing about cloth is you can get a very beautiful effect if you stitch it onto paper, but it's very hard because your needle has to pass through two very different things, right? I'm just going to finish this off without I don't need the template to end my leaf. Yeah, your needle has to pass through two different types of material, and that's not always very pleasant. So we are going to use the tissue, but tissue will be in a different technique. We are going to use this red. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 things already, right? And maybe watercolor would be a 6, in which case this would be a 7. Okay, I'm just going to cut a couple more in case I don't like the final arrangement. I do want to use things that are easily available and accessible to you, which means that I'm going to use this. I'm going to draw this so that it's easier to cut. Maybe I should do it on this side. Makes more sense, right? See, we're going to get this lovely textured leaf. Shapes are simple to cut. There you go. I like this leaf. Well, okay. Let's bring our board back and see if it's dried up. Let's begin gluing down stuff. Okay, we pretty much have a rough idea about placement. So the first two things, I'm going to glue this jute on this, on the cardstock, the frame that we had made, and I'm going to apply glue over here. Now you have options, but it's better to use a liquid form of glue. And so what I'm going to use is matte medium. If you don't have matte medium, you can use Elmer's glue, you can use Fevicol, you can use anything which is liquid. I have a lot of stick glue around, but thin paper like this will tear, tissue paper will tear with a glue stick if you try to rub it. Of course, if that's all you have, make it work with the materials you have, which is why I've given more options than the ones that I am going to actually follow. And so I'm going to use a brush, and this entire leaf is going to come onto this paper. So I'm just going to coat it at the back with, again, clearly my brush was not completely clean after using it for the acrylic paint, but no matter. We will work with it. That's on the back side. It doesn't really matter. So much about this is about the experience of creating the tactile sensations, the cutting, the feel of the fabric, because eventually that's what we're doing, right? We're creating a sensory board for ourselves. And so that's what we're most interested in. So I wanted this to go off the border, but not off the paper, because obviously, as you can see, it's flimsy paper. It's copy paper, printer paper on which I've done a gel print. And so that's our first leaf. Eventually we will thicken the stem with either a sketch pen or a acrylic marker or a pencil. So that's the first one which is done. Using my stencil to just kind of roughly mark out where I want the next to come. But before that, yes, sorry, I said we will stick this, and so I'm going to do that. Obviously this has holes, so I'm going to apply the liquid glue, which is actually matte medium, on the cardstock. I forget what I'd called it. Okay, I'm out of words. I struggle with words when I'm creating, which is, I think, not an uncommon experience for many people. Oh, I love the way that leaf looks, and it's such great texture. It's such great texture. Okay, I can always make sure that I put a lot of paste here. Later on we can even, at the edges, we can even pull out these to give it a little bit of a frayed appearance, but not too many. And I might cut off this white thing, or I might leave it there. Sometimes a little imperfection is very nice. One thing we can do with something like this is to let it dry. You would use a piece of waxing paper. I mentioned waxing paper earlier on, and I usually have a lot of it lying around. I'm always stealing stuff from my kitchen, so you can place it here so the waxing paper won't really stick on it. And then just put something heavy on it, like a book. Okay, and keep it aside so that it sticks well, so that it doesn't lift off and the glue dries. So we've got this first one down. Now let's figure out where we want to place the next one. And as far as I can remember, I had decided to place this, right, this one here. And so I'm just going to give myself a rough outline of the edges, because I don't want to apply even my brush on this directly. I would much rather apply it to the paper. Watercolor paper is hardy, whereas coffee filters are, they're prone to tearing and stuff. So if I apply it and I keep dragging this brush across the surface, it actually feels pretty firm and nice. But if it tears, I'd be sad to lose the different colors and shades. So much like a real leaf, no? I'm not saying this looks like a real leaf but it has different colors all over. Okay. And one thing I'm going to use is, again, I'm going to use a bit of the paper and the back of the cover to kind of squash it down a bit. You can use more professional tools like a Baron or a foam roller, brayer, but in a pinch, these are the homegrown way for doing these things, and they're not so bad. So we have our two leaves in place. One thing we could have done is make our leaves of different sizes, and I should have thought of that. It would have added a little more diversity, but we can angle them at different angles, right? So we can leave a lot of space for the one which I'm going to do here, which will likely be, well, I could have this one here as well, but then I'll have a really soft one going out. Yeah, I think I will do this, and this is how it would come, right? And again, I've drawn it out, and I'm just going to apply the matte medium. I really want to apply it well, because I do want to squash that, because I do want the texture to be there, and perhaps I should have waited for it to completely dry and be hardened before I started playing around with it. But on the other hand, we don't have to try and be perfect. And well, some amount of pressing down is inevitable, especially at the edges, because I don't want it to come off, right? It's okay. Now one thing that we can do is check and see if this has dried enough for us to at least apply it. So there are three which have to come here. So this one might have to face a little down. I could take this down and kind of have this come this way. So this is also, it's not bad. Because what I do know is we want this red here. Or was that where the tissue was supposed to come? I know I want the tissue ones to come where it will fully be in this. So that you can see the underneath layer. Red would look nice here this way. Because they would be contrasting. I think what I'm going to do is take this one. So these kind of art decisions, you're going to make them as the piece evolves and as the piece speaks to you. And since we're not trying to achieve anything, but this isn't a fine art practice. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for making a usable piece of art and for the process also to be grounding. So it's best, I find, to just go with the flow and allow whatever comes up to come up. And so I think I'm pretty happy with that. And I can still cut this if I want. Now I wanted to tell you, I should have left one of these as the making the outlines for the ones which are to be filled by paint and color. So don't be like me. Since, like I said, we're not doing something which is very exacting, I'm going to make another format, structure. Really, I fail to understand why I'm at a loss for what this is called. Stencil? And okay, we have some big here. That looks pretty cool, huh? The leaves within the leaves. Maybe I can use it in another project. This is the great thing about mixed media is nothing ever goes wasted. And I think this goes well here. And then over here, I'll have it this way. And then maybe one is paint, one is sand. Both of them can't come that way. Neither can the tissue one. So this will have to be like this. In which case, this will have to be overlapping this. Or it would have to be smaller. Okay, let's draw this first because I have to get them all. Now I have to get them inside. Oh, okay. It's working out. I mean, they're touching, but they're not overlapping. Although I think overlapping is also very cool. And, I can always adjust the sizes of all of these. So nothing is written in stone. This is just pencil, right? We can erase it if we don't like I kind of like it. Well, this is this line, the main stem line. Yeah. And so this is pretty good. So we can erase a few of these extra lines. And actually we can erase all of them a little bit. Right, I have decided I'm going to do the chalk paint over here, sand one over here. And I'm going to do the tissue one here. And I'm going to be burnishing it with a bit of golden wax. Again, you don't have to do these kind of things. But now that I'm done with my glue, what I'm going to do is I usually put this so that the lid doesn't jam. So I put a piece of the cellophane paper and I will wash my brush. Otherwise it will stick the hairs together and this brush will be of no use to me. So now we're going to paint this little section with the chalk paint. I'm using the same brush that I was using for the matte medium because it's all acrylic. So it doesn't matter. And I can always pour a little into this, which is what I'm going to do. There's a thicker stuff underneath. So I'm going to get some of that thick stuff out. They call this terracotta red. So I'm just going to go for it. Not diluting it. My brush is wet. So that is why there is a bit of moistness to it, otherwise it's pretty thick. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover it up completely. With acrylic paint, I know I can scratch into the paint. I don't know if you can do that with chalk medium. So sometimes I get these bright ideas and we have to find out while recording whether they work or not, which is fun, I guess. And so, okay. So I should probably wait for this to dry before I keep adding additional layers. And I can't say I'm exactly pleased with the way it is. It's very watery. I'd expected chalk paint to be more chalky. But the good thing is that it does look texturist, right? And so I'm going to use the back of my brush to scratch into it, which is to do this and then to do this. Draw the veins of the leaves. Now none of the others have veins. So why does this one have it? No reason. I felt like doing it that way. So now I'll see when it dries if I like it this way. Actually, I do like it, I think. And I think that the light and dark color will probably add to some of the charm of the piece. So I'm going to just clear off this stuff and come back. We are back again. We're not done with the matte medium because we've got to do two things, sand and tissue paper. And tissue paper is really interesting. It's a very cool technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my matte medium again. It doesn't matter if your tissue paper is scratched up like mine is. What we can do is try and get this in the rough shape of a leaf. Now with this, honestly, you don't have to be very, very careful in how you cut. And I'll tell you why, because it's transparent, right? So it doesn't really show up at all. So why are we cutting it? We're cutting it because it makes that first placement easy. And then we layer little strips of this tissue, one on top of the other. And it gives a very nice crumpled effect. And tissue paper is something that most of us have access to. So this is the cool thing that I want to show you. You can just place your tissue paper. Tissue paper is porous. I should actually be doing this with a flat brush. It would go easier and faster because I would cover more surface area. But yeah, there you go. See, once you get some edges down, it becomes so much easier. See? And isn't this fun? It is nerve-wracking to try and put the glue or the matte medium on the paper and then try and lay the tissue paper exactly. It tears. So when you just place it, it feels like magic to me that you can apply the glue on the upper surface and it sticks the tissue paper to the lower surface. It's a little bit childlike of me. I know tissue papers are porous, especially if it is like single ply tissue paper. You might have two ply tissue paper and I have only single ply here. Single ply means there's just one ply. But if you have two ply tissue paper, you can literally peel it apart from each other. You can use the two plies also, okay? But I think it's just easier to handle single ply and I love the effect that it gives. So this is done and now I'm going to tear little bits of tissue paper and place it on top of this, wherever, however. And so it's like layer upon layer and it gives a really nice crinkly effect in the end. Some layers are thicker and some layers are thinner, if you know what I mean. All you need to do is now just keep tearing bits and put them wherever they go. And because the tissue paper is already kind of sticky, whoa, that's exactly what I didn't want to have to. Matte medium is meant for use with acrylic paints. So it's not going to leave a white stain. It'll probably just give this a really cool textured effect. But now I've got red on my brush, so I need to thoroughly wash this and come back. And I'm back. I hope you realize why I'm washing my brush. If I don't wash my brush, it will still have red paint on it. And then it'll make this leaf go red as well. And then that would be way too much red. I don't want that much red. I want a nice balance of brown, red, and a little bit of this white. If you can see, there's already a little speck of paint which came from somewhere on the brush, which is fine. But if there was a whole wash of red, I don't think I would have liked it. And when you fold it like this, it gives these interesting effects. So see, now this red is peeking through more because it hasn't got a lot of layers of tissue and this is beading up because it had rolled out, whereas this is more white. Now here you can see the green. So that's what's really nice about this texture effect is that different layers and different thickness, right, everywhere. So since this is white, I can go to town over here with tissue paper. So you can see the black mark over here and of the pencil. I've obviously not erased it off very well. There are a couple of things we can do with that. One is just take an outliner and outline it, which is probably what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'll do it for all the leaves, but a black fine liner and outline it is probably what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to wait for this to dry. The next step is going to be application of the matte medium here and then literally just throwing sand on it and allowing that sand to settle and coat this whole surface. So if I throw sand right now while this matte medium is wet here, it's going to stick here and I don't want it sticking anywhere. And so I've gone to my hairdryer and dried everything up because I really do want to do this next part. Now this leaf, where you can see it, just apply your liquid glue. It's your Elmer's glue. You could use matte medium. Matte medium is really not expensive. In fact, I'm using a student brand. Camel is a student brand in India. I think this one bottle is about 140 rupees. So 140 rupees is, I don't know, $2 or £2, but nothing more than that. Okay, so now this, just make sure once you've applied it, just make sure that the entire surface is covered, okay, with this gluey substance, because we're going to be expecting it to stick in the shape of a leaf. I just open the sand onto this and see, it will go and stick and it's actually going to get caught up in this even though I don't want it to, but I am liking the effect. And so you can also use your finger to spread it around because it is very hot right now. So what's happening is my glue is drying and I want to miss the opportunity to make sure that my surfaces are covered. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of dust it off, but from the side. And you can see that it's left a pretty nice leaf shape. Maybe we need to get some glue here, maybe a dot here, or I could leave it like this. It looks so cool, that effect. Sometimes you need to allow the unintentional effects to happen and just enjoy the beauty of whatever your art is doing in its own process. I think the slight white streaks, the heaviness on some sides and the lightness on others, it's really adding to the texture very beautifully of the leaf. It's obviously going to feel textured when you touch it, but it looks like I've shaded it, which is pretty cool because I haven't, right? I'm going to set that aside to dry. Here we are. Let's have a look at what this is like. I'm going to keep it here because I've oriented my camera horizontally. The paper has warped a bit. That's okay. There are ways to deal with that, and I'll tell you about them later. But this is pretty much what it looks like. So now we've come on to the next step, which is where I want to put in the stem, and I want to outline some but not all of the leaves, because all of this is so busy. I want to keep it really simple. So you can use a sketch pen, you can use an acrylic marker, you can use a colored pencil, but I felt like all of this is very strong and a colored pencil will be lost in the background. Plus, I really like sketchy marks that a fine liner can make. So this is a micron pen, and so I'm actually going for this rough effect because I know that it will go well with this concept of a textured plant. Okay, and I want the main stem to be a little thickish. Each of the little branches I'm going to do a little less thick. And okay, so that's done. Now I definitely want to outline this one. So I'm going to start with the same kind of sketchy look because I already have the pencil mark. And so it allows the pencil mark to get incorporated into the design. And if I leave this, it looks like this leaf is overlapping this, which is also an effect I like. So I think this looks really nice. But if I do outline everyone, I feel like the effect will be lost. I don't want to outline this. This is very textured. I don't feel like outlining this. I'm probably going to outline this one or this one. I'll see. What I now want to introduce you to is this metallic wax. And obviously, you could just leave it like this and it's textured. You could add a bit of paint to it if you wanted it. It allows the paint to show through. But this wax is really cool. It's beeswax with this metallic paint. And you just take a little on your hand and you just apply it like this. Isn't that lovely? Doesn't it give a gorgeous leafy look? I think it's turned out even better than I expected. And it's still allowing like the green here and the red here to peek through, making this look a little yellowish. So this leaf actually, it was supposed to be like a white leaf, but it looks more like a transparent leaf. And this looks like a combination of like red and green, and both of these are green and gold. Sorry, red and brown, and these are green and gold. So I think I'm like super pleased with the color symmetry. Now here's one thing I really didn't think of. The way you flatten this paper is you put it under books or surfaces and you keep it pressed, which means this is going to lose its texture. One thing I can do is that I can isolate this and just keep the rest of it under really heavy books, which is probably what I'm going to do. But I am thinking about where else to add a line mark to, and don't feel like adding it anywhere else. I feel like symmetrically speaking, this is the one that should have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a single outline, not a very sketchy one, just a single outline here. You don't need to overthink these decisions, you know. Sometimes you just need to do it. And I think this is where art gives you a lot of courage. You just do things. Yeah, so I think that gives us the hint of being defined and balances it out. Now, one last thing that I did want to do is I wanted to teach you how to sew on paper, because believe me, it's an experience like you've not had before. And so I have this brown colored thread and needle, and I'm going to show you something called the seed stitch, which is very, very random. The amount of thread you take is from the tip of your finger to till your elbow, so that much ish, and you snip it off. And I like a single skein of thread. If you look at my needle, you can see it's already bent because this is a needle I use on paper. Now we're going to put those seed stitches here. This is just a little foam that I like to keep underneath, and for now I'm going to be doing my stitches here in this corner because see, this is dark. This is a good counterbalance to it. Okay, so I'm just going to, you can use a needle or you can use any other stabbing thing you have, like a crochet needle. This is actually a felting needle and I prefer it because it's longer, it's easier for stabbing. But in essence, just do these random stabs, okay? Oh, I cannot tell you how satisfying they are. Make sure a few of them go out. And if you keep a piece of foam or something beneath, it will be easier to do. So I'm just going to keep this away and threadle this needle. But I have this knot at the end and I have this threadle needle. You can start anywhere, okay? So say I start at this end. The one thing I do not want to do is pull it very tight. Unlike cloth where you can pull it very tight, if you keep pulling the knot will pull through the paper. So I'm going to keep it long. And in fact, I'm going to put a piece of sticky tape there to hold it in place. I just want to show you how you can hold it in place. And then, well, it is the most fun thing ever. I don't want to make such a large stitch. Seed stitches are like to be small. They're like seeds. So yeah, there you go. You just put it in another place. Going through this way is easy. Going through the other way is not. And then say, suppose I come out here. Okay. You must be random. And being random in size as well as direction is so much harder than you'd think it would be. Of course, you can keep moving your paper back and forth so you can see what you're doing. Like I know that these are close. So I'll do this one with this one maybe. And then maybe the isolated one with a it just adds a little extra no matter what you say. And so you can see, which hole you're trying to get at. But be careful not to poke your fingers, because although these aren't really the sharpest needles ever, it still doesn't feel pleasant to get poked. See if you can see. I'm not ending up varying the size at all. They're all looking the same size, which is, I guess, okay to some extent. Okay, now that became a bit too tiny. I think that's going to cut through. I hope it doesn't. Oh, I like the way it's coming up. I'm being surprisingly even with my stitches, which is so not what I wanted to do. But I'm enjoying the randomness of the pattern. And so I think that will have to be what makes me happy for now. I know my holes are done, but I'm going to continue until uh my thread is over. Because it's nice to have in the periphery a few seeds scattered about. I think that's it. The thread is telling me it's done and I had better listen. Okay, last one. Okay, I'm going to stop here, tape this in place. And this does two things, Also give support to where you made these holes. And I feel like with something as fragile as paper, and especially with this art, which is like textured art, which hopefully something that you're gonna come back and touch, right? I want to show you now how to flatten out the paper, and that is, it's not hard. You just put it on a flat surface. I'm going to protect it with this. I think I'm going to do this on the cloth. So this is done. And what I'm going to do is going to pick up a bunch of heavy books. Well, first just books to place over it. And I'm not going to flatten. I'm going to use this. This is a really good, thick, heavy book I have. And that's great for the corners, right? I might shift this here and put something else over here. But yeah, this should help flatten it out overnight. And then I'm going to come back and see what's what with it. So my friend, I actually didn't keep this overnight. I just kept it for under an hour and I flattened the paper out pretty well. So I'm going to keep it away overnight as well to flatten out even more. Once again, protecting the textured parts with butter paper, but not this one because I don't want this corrugated effect of the cardboard to get completely crushed. But as I said, it's a piece of art that's meant to be used, not just admired. I hope you enjoy making it. I hope you use it. And like I said in the introduction, please share what you do, the experience of watching the video, the experience of creating this. If you have any doubts or questions, obviously, I'm really happy to help. I wish you always the ability to be able to return to center and to ground yourself. No matter what's happening in life, I wish and pray for you that you will have an anchor in your body, in the earth, in nature, in close relationships, in your spirituality, in your God or guides or guardian angels. You may always have somewhere to turn to when times are rough, and that you come through it stronger and ever more determined to shape this world in accordance with your values. My links will be available with you, and I'm easily found on Instagram and YouTube at Magic with Nimisha. This video will be hosted on YouTube, and my website is notjustmindfulness.com. So there are several ways for us to be in touch, and I have a lot of other free offerings. Please feel free to sign up for any of them or all of them. Thank you. Bye-bye.